I was standing in my living room, phone trembling in my hand, staring at the 3 missed calls from Richard when the text message appeared on my screen that would shatter everything I thought I knew about family. Issa, don't go to Emily's house. Call me back immediately, urgent. My heart hammered against my ribs as I heard the news anchor on TV droning on about a financial fraud case that had rocked the city. I didn't know it then. But my own sister was about to become the villain in a story I never imagined I'd have to live through. Before I tell you what happened next, if you're enjoying this story of survival and strength, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more real stories like this. And drop a comment below sharing your own experiences with family betrayal. Your support means everything and helps others find these stories when they need them most. Let me take you back to where this nightmare truly began. Back when I still believed my sister Emily loved me. My name is Isabella Carter, though everyone calls me Issa. I'm 37 years old. And for most of my adult life, I'd built what I thought was a successful career in interior design. I owned a boutique firm in downtown Chicago that catered to upscale clients, the kind who didn't blink at 5-figure invoices for a single room renovation. I was proud of what I'd accomplished. Proud that I'd done it all on my own without the safety net that my older sister Emily seemed to need constantly. Our parents had passed away 3 years earlier. First, Mom from cancer. Then Dad from what the doctors called a broken heart, but what I knew was simply the inability to live without the woman he'd loved for 42 years. Emily had always been the golden child. She was 5 years older than me. Stunningly beautiful in that effortless way that made people turn their heads on the street. She had married Derek Roberts when I was still in college. And they'd built what appeared to be a perfect life in the affluent suburb of Aspen Ridge. Derek ran his own tech startup, or at least that's what he called it. Emily had never worked a day since the wedding, content to spend her time at country club luncheons and charity galas where she held court like some kind of suburban queen. They had one daughter, Lily, who was now 15 and seemed to be the only genuine soul in that household. After our parents died, Emily and I inherited everything equally. The family home, a beautiful lakeside property in Wisconsin that had been in our family for 3 generations, was worth about $2.5 million. There were also definite investment accounts, life insurance policies, and various other assets that brought each of our shares to roughly $5 million. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having, but I'd been careful with it. I'd paid off my condo, invested wisely, and continued working because my business was my passion, not just my livelihood. Emily, on the other hand, had gone through her inheritance like water. Within a year, she and Derek had bought a massive house they couldn't afford. Derek had poured hundreds of thousands into his failing business ventures, and they'd taken lavish vacations to Europe and the Caribbean that they documented obsessively on social media. I'd noticed the signs. The way Emily's smile seemed strained in photos. The way Derek's boasting about his business success became more frequent and more defensive. The way they'd started asking me to co-sign loans or front them money for various emergencies that always seemed to crop up. I'd helped them a few times. What else was family for? When Derek's company needed a bridge loan, I'd written a check for $40,000 that was supposed to be paid back in 6 months. That was 2 years ago. When Emily called crying about how they were behind on Lily's private school tuition, I'd paid $25,000 directly to the school. When their property taxes came due and they were short, I'd covered the difference. Each time, Emily promised it was the last time, that Derek's business was about to turn a corner, that they'd pay me back with interest. I never saw a dime, but I told myself that's what family did. We helped each other. Emily had been there for me when I'd gone through a devastating breakup in my late 20s. She'd let me stay at her house for 2 weeks while I cried and ate ice cream and questioned every life choice I'd ever made. Surely these loans were just paying back that kindness. The warning signs I'd missed were so obvious in hindsight. The way Emily had started asking detailed questions about my finances. Do you have a financial advisor? Issa, who manages your accounts? Have you thought about what would happen if you got sick or couldn't manage your own affairs? The way she'd suggested. So sweetly. That maybe I should give her power of attorney. Just in case something happened. You live alone. Issa. What if you had an accident? I could help make sure everything was taken care of. I'd laughed it off. Told her I was perfectly capable of managing my own life. Then there was the incident at the pharmacy 6 months before everything exploded. I'd gone to pick up a prescription for antibiotics after a nasty bout of bronchitis. The pharmacist had asked me several questions about my medical history, and I'd been confused about one of them because I was feverish and exhausted. I'd had to call my doctor's office right there to clarify. It was nothing. just a sick woman trying to get her medication. But apparently Emily's neighbor had been in line behind me. 3 weeks later, Emily mentioned over coffee that she'd heard I'd seemed very confused at the pharmacy. That maybe I should get checked out. That sometimes stress could affect memory and cognition. I'd brushed it off. I'd been sick. Of course I was confused. Another time, I'd forgotten my car keys at a restaurant after a business dinner where I'd had 2 glasses of wine. I'd had to Uber home and return the next morning to retrieve them from the lost and found. Somehow, Emily knew about that too. She'd called, voice dripping with concern. Isa, honey, you're working too hard. Maybe you should see someone. This isn't normal. I should have seen it. I should have understood that she was building a narrative, creating a paper trail, constructing a version of me that existed only in carefully selected anecdotes and deliberate misinterpretations. But I didn't see it because she was my sister. And I trusted her. The Sunday dinner invitations had become more frequent over the past few months. Emily insisted on these family gatherings. Just the 4 of us usually. Sometimes with Lily joining after she finished her homework. Derek would grill steaks on their massive patio while Emily showed off her latest renovations. Home improvements funded by money they didn't have. I'd bring wine and try to ignore the growing sense of unease that settled over me every time I walked through their door. That particular Sunday in late October was supposed to be another one of those dinners. I'd been getting ready, pulling on a cashmere sweater and debating whether to bring red or white wine, when my phone started buzzing. 3 calls from Richard Hale, my lawyer. Richard had been our family attorney for years, had handled my parents' estate, had set up my business LLC. He was in his early 50s, sharp as a tack, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. He didn't call 3 times in a row, unless something was catastrophically wrong. That's when the text came through. The one. That changed everything. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial his number. He answered on the first ring. Isa? Where are you? His voice was tight with urgency. At home. Getting ready to go to Emily's for dinner. Richard. What's going on? You're scaring me. Don't go to that dinner. Lock your doors. I'm on my way to your place right now. I'm 10 minutes out. There's something you need to see immediately. And it concerns Emily and your inheritance. The blood drained from my face. What are you talking about? Just stay put. I'll explain everything when I get there. Do not, under any circumstances, go to your sister's house or speak to her until you've seen what I have to show you. He hung up, and I stood there in my living room, the wine bottle forgotten on the counter, my mind racing through possibilities. Had something happened to the estate? Was there a problem with the trust? Had Emily done something to her share of the inheritance? Richard made it to my condo in 8 minutes. I know because I counted every single second, watching the clock on my microwave tick forward while my imagination conjured increasingly awful scenarios. When I opened the door, his face was grim. He was carrying a thick manila folder and a laptop bag. And he didn't waste time with pleasantries. We need to sit down. Isa, what I'm about to show you is going to be extremely difficult to process. We sat at my dining table, the same table where Emily and I had shared countless cups of coffee and sister talks over the years. Richard pulled out a stack of legal documents and placed them in front of me with the careful deliberation of someone handling a live bomb. 3 days ago, your sister and her husband filed a petition with the Superior Court. They're seeking to have you declared mentally incompetent and to establish guardianship over you. The words didn't make sense. I heard them, but my brain couldn't process their meaning. It was like he was speaking a foreign language. Mentally incompetent? Me? I must have said something because Richard continued, his voice gentle but firm. They've submitted a 47-page filing claiming that you're unable to manage your own affairs due to cognitive decline and mental instability. They have medical records, witness statements from neighbors, documentation of incidents where you appeared confused or disoriented. That's insane. I run a business. I have major clients. I'm managing a $1 million renovation project right now. How could anyone possibly claim I'm incompetent? Richard opened his laptop and pulled up a document. Because they've been building a case for months. Isa, look at this. It's a statement from a pharmacist claiming you were unable to answer basic questions about your medical history. Here's a report from a restaurant manager stating you left your personal belongings behind and seemed disoriented. There's a letter from your former family physician, Dr. Benson, noting concerns about your mental state during your last visit. I felt like I was falling. Dr. Benson had retired 8 months ago. I'd seen him once after my father died, when I was drowning in grief and had asked for something to help me sleep. He'd given me a prescription and suggested I see a therapist to work through my loss. That was it. One appointment where I'd been sad and grieving, and somehow that had been twisted into evidence of mental incompetence. Richard, this is crazy. All of this can be explained. I was sick at the pharmacy. I forgot my keys after having wine with dinner. I was grieving when I saw Dr. Benson. None of this means I'm incompetent. I know that. And you know that. But in court, grief and incompetence can look remarkably similar on paper. They've been very careful. Issa. Very strategic. And there's something else you need to understand. He pulled out another document. This one, a financial report. Your share of your parents' estate, combined with your business assets and your condo, is now worth approximately $5.3 million. If they succeed in having you declared incompetent and gaining guardianship over you, they will have legal control over every single asset you own. Your bank accounts, your property, your business, even your medical decisions. The room started spinning. Why would they do this? I've helped them. I've given them money. Richard's expression was almost pitying. Because you haven't given them enough. And they're drowning. He slid another document across the table. This one, a financial investigation report. Derek's startup failed 18 months ago. They're $720,000 in debt. Issa. Their house is mortgaged to the hilt. They owe back taxes. They have maxed out credit cards, unpaid loans, and Derek's facing potential charges from investors who claim he defrauded them. They need money desperately. And you're the easiest target. I felt sick. Emily was my sister. We'd shared a childhood. She'd held my hand on my first day of kindergarten. We'd giggled over boys and cried over breakups and celebrated each other's victories. How could she do this to me? What happens if they win? My voice sounded small and far away. If they win, they become your legal guardians. They can sell your condo, liquidate your investments, close your business, and transfer all of your assets into accounts they control. You would have no say. You'd essentially become a legal child, dependent on them for everything. And given their financial situation, I think we both know what would happen to your money. The reality of it crashed over me like a wave. This wasn't about concern for my well-being. This was about survival. Their survival, at the cost of my entire life. Every kindness Emily had shown me, every sisterly moment we'd shared, suddenly felt suspect. Had any of it been real? Or had I always just been a resource to be exploited? What do we do? I managed to ask. Richard's jaw tightened. We fight. First, we need to get you evaluated by an independent psychiatrist, someone with credentials that can't be questioned. I've already contacted Dr. Ethan Reed. He's one of the foremost experts in forensic psychiatry in the state. Second, you're going to start documenting everything. Every conversation. Every meeting. Every interaction. Keep a detailed journal with timestamps. Third, and this is crucial, you cannot let Emily know that you're aware of any of this. You need to act completely normal. Maybe even friendlier than usual. We need time to build our defense. Act normal? How am I supposed to have dinner with someone who's trying to steal my entire life? Because if you confront her now, she'll know we're onto her and she'll adjust her strategy. We need the element of surprise. Let her think she's winning. The petition hearing isn't for another 6 weeks. We have time to gather evidence, get expert evaluations, and build an airtight case proving you're completely competent. I nodded numbly, though the thought of sitting across from Emily and pretending everything was fine made my stomach turn. Richard pulled out another business card. This is Frank Miller. He's a private investigator, former police detective, specializes in financial fraud and family exploitation cases. He's already started looking into Derek and Emily's finances, if there's anything shady in their background. And I suspect there is. He'll find it. I took the card with shaking hands. My whole life had become a legal battlefield in the span of 20 minutes. And I hadn't even known I was at war. Over the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life that made me feel like I was losing my mind for real. By day, I ran my business, met with clients, made design decisions, and managed my team. By night, I documented everything in a leather-bound journal that Richard had given me. Monday, October 23rd. 7:15 p.m. Emily called to ask if I wanted to come over for coffee on Wednesday. Said she missed spending time with me. Suggested I bring any important documents I might need help organizing. Wednesday, October 25th, 3:30 p.m. Met Emily at her house. She asked detailed questions about my investment accounts and whether I'd considered consolidating them. Suggested her financial advisor could help. Declined. The journaling became obsessive. I wrote down what I ate, where I went, who I talked to, what I wore. Every mundane detail of my existence became potential evidence that I was a functioning competent adult. It was exhausting and surreal and deeply, profoundly sad. The appointment with Dr. Ethan Reed was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon at his office in the medical district. I'd been terrified, though Richard assured me it was just a formality. You're one of the most clear-headed people I know, Issa. This evaluation is going to prove that definitively. Dr. Reed's office was modern and surprisingly warm, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs that didn't feel clinical. He was in his late 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. We spent 3 hours together. He asked me questions about my childhood, my education, my calling in Zaveri, career, my relationships. He gave me cognitive tests, memory exercises, problem-solving scenarios. He asked about my parents' deaths and how I'd coped with the grief. He asked about my relationship with Emily. That's where I broke down. Tell me about your sister, he'd said. And suddenly I was crying. Great heaving sobs that I couldn't control. I told him everything. The years of feeling second best. Of trying to win her approval. Of helping her financially, even when I suspected she was using me. Of the desperate hope that family meant something more than transactions and obligations. I told him about the little girl I'd been who'd worshipped her older sister. And the woman I'd become who still wanted that sister's love even as that sister plotted to destroy her life. Dr. Reed had handed me tissues and waited patiently for me to compose myself. Then he'd said something I'll never forget. Ms. Carter, emotional pain and mental incompetence are not the same thing. Grief is healthy. Disappointment is rational. What you're experiencing is the normal response of a clear-minded person to an abnormal situation. You are not losing your mind. Your mind is working exactly as it should, processing betrayal and adjusting to new, painful information. The evaluation took nearly 4 hours total. When it was over, Dr. Reed walked me to the door personally. I'll have my full report ready by early next week. But I can tell you now, off the record, that there is absolutely no evidence of cognitive impairment or mental incompetence. In fact, your results are well above average for your age group. You're one of the most mentally acute patients I've evaluated this year. I'd cried again then. But from relief. At least I wasn't crazy. At least my own mind was still mine. The hardest part was maintaining the charade with Emily. She called frequently. Always so sweet. So concerned. How are you feeling? Issa? You seem tired lately. Are you sleeping okay? Each call felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. I wanted to scream at her. To demand why she was doing this. To beg her to stop. But Richard's voice echoed in my head. Don't let her know. Keep up the act. We need more time. So I played the role. I had coffee with her. I let her ask invasive questions about my finances and my health. I smiled and nodded and pretended I didn't notice the predatory gleam in her eyes when I mentioned a new client contract or a successful project completion. Each interaction felt like swallowing glass. 3 weeks into this nightmare, Emily called with what she said was exciting news. Issa. Honey, I've been thinking. You have so many important documents and financial things to keep track of. Why don't you bring them over this weekend? I can help you organize everything. Maybe set up a better filing system. Derek and I really want to help you stay on top of things. I'd felt ice water flood my veins. She was trying to get her hands on my actual documents. Bank statements. Investment records. Property deeds. If I gave her access to those, she could do God knows what. I'd called Richard immediately after hanging up. Don't give her anything, he'd said sharply. Tell her you've already organized everything with your accountant. Better yet, tell her you're working on it and you'll let her know when you're ready for help. But Richard, what if they have cameras or recording devices? What if they're documenting me refusing help and using that as evidence that I'm paranoid or unable to accept assistance? Then we'll deal with that in court. Issa, you cannot give her access to your financial documents. That's a line we can't cross. The paranoia was real and consuming. I started checking my condo for hidden cameras. I watched what I said on phone calls. I became hyper-aware of my own behavior, constantly analyzing whether I seemed competent, whether I was doing anything that could be misconstrued as confusion or instability. It was like being a prisoner in my own life. Then came the night that changed everything. November 3rd, a Tuesday evening. It had been raining all day. One of those cold, miserable autumn rains that seeps into your bones. I was home alone, reviewing design plans for a client project, when there was a knock at my door. Soft, hesitant, almost apologetic. I looked through the peephole and saw Lily standing there, absolutely soaked. Her school uniform plastered to her thin frame, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. I threw open the door immediately. Lily? Sweetheart. What are you doing here? It's after 9 on a school night. She was shaking, from cold or fear, or both. Aunt Izzy. They don't know I'm here. Please. I need to talk to you. Please don't send me back yet. I pulled her inside, grabbed towels from the bathroom, and wrapped her up while I made hot chocolate the way I used to when she was little, with extra marshmallows and a splash of vanilla. She sat on my couch, trembling, clutching the mug like it was a life preserver. What happened? Are you okay? Did someone hurt you? Lily looked up at me with eyes that seemed far too old for 15. Aunt Izzy, I know what Mom and Dad are doing. I know about the court thing. I know they're trying to say you're crazy and take your money. My heart stopped. How do you know about that? She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Because I heard them. I recorded them. Aunt Izzy. I recorded them talking about it. And you need to hear what they said. You need to know the truth. She pressed play. And what came through that phone's tiny speaker made my blood run cold. It was Emily's voice. Crystal clear. Talking to Derek in what must have been their home office. The date stamp showed it was from 5 days earlier. When the court declares Isabella incompetent, we'll immediately sell her condo. It should go fast in this market. That's at least $1.2 million right there. Then we'll transfer her investment accounts into our names. We can drain those gradually so it doesn't look suspicious. Derek's voice, always so jovial in person, was flat and calculating. What about her business? We'll close it. Claim it's too stressful for her to manage in her condition. Liquidate the assets. Pay out her contracts as minimally as possible. Her client list alone is worth something. We could probably sell it to one of her competitors. Emily again. That voice I'd known my whole life. Speaking with casual cruelty. She's had everything handed to her for too long. The favorite child. The successful one. The one Dad was so proud of. Well, now it's our turn. We earned this. We've been patient. We've played the concerned family. Now we collect. What if she fights it? She won't have the capacity to fight. That's the point of guardianship. She'll be like a child again, completely dependent on us. And if she gets difficult, we can always have her evaluated again. Maybe suggest a facility where she'd be more comfortable. The recording ended. The silence in my condo was deafening. I looked at Lily, this brave 15-year-old girl who'd just betrayed her own parents to do the right thing. And I started to cry. Not the quiet, dignified tears I'd been shedding for weeks, but loud, ugly, gut-wrenching sobs. Lily put her arms around me. I'm so sorry. Aunt Izzy. I'm so sorry. I love my mom. But this is wrong. What they're doing is evil. You saved me. Lily. You just saved my entire life. I called Richard immediately. He answered groggily. It was nearly 10 p.m. Issa, what's wrong? Richard. I have a recording. Lily recorded Emily and Derek discussing their plan. Everything. They talk about selling my assets, transferring my accounts, closing my business. They admit it's all about the money. It's all there. There was a long pause. Then Richard's voice, suddenly sharp and wide awake. Issa, this changes everything. This isn't just a guardianship case anymore. This is financial fraud, exploitation, conspiracy to commit theft. Can you send me the file? Yes? Richard. What do we do now? Now? Now we go on the offensive. We file a countersuit. Fraud. Attempted exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Conspiracy. We're going to bury them. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal strategy sessions. Richard brought in Frank Miller, the private investigator, who had uncovered even more damaging information. Derek wasn't just in debt. He'd been running a Ponzi scheme with his startup, taking investment money from new investors to pay returns to old ones. The Securities and Exchange Commission was already investigating him, though he'd managed to keep it quiet. Emily had been complicit, using her social connections to bring in wealthy friends as investors. They were facing potential criminal charges even without this guardianship mess. Richard filed our countersuit on a cold Monday morning in mid-November. The petition for guardianship was scheduled for late December. But we weren't waiting. We sued them for attempted fraud, elder exploitation, conspiracy to commit theft, and emotional distress. We attached Dr. Reed's evaluation showing I was completely competent. We attached Frank's financial investigation, showing their massive debts and Derek's fraudulent business practices. And most damning of all, we attached the recording Lily had made. Emily called me 40 minutes after being served the papers. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was shrill and panicked. Issa. What the hell are you doing? How could you sue your own sister? We were trying to help you. You're sick. You need help. And this is how you repay us? Call me back right now. I deleted the voicemail without listening to it all the way through. I didn't owe her anything, least of all an explanation. The court date was set for December 18th, 2 days before the original guardianship hearing. The judge, the Honorable Eleanor Vance, had a reputation for being brilliant, fair, and absolutely ruthless with liars. Richard had requested her specifically. The morning of the hearing, I woke up at 5 a.m., too anxious to sleep. I put on my best suit, a charcoal gray Armani that I'd bought for a major client presentation, paired with pearl earrings that had been my mother's. I wanted to look competent, successful, unshakable. I wanted the judge to see me and know immediately that I was not someone who needed a guardian. Richard picked me up at 7:30. The hearing was at 9. We sat in his car outside the courthouse for 20 minutes while he reviewed our strategy one last time. Issa, they're going to try to paint you as emotionally unstable, as someone who's turning on family out of paranoia or mental illness. Don't engage with their accusations. Stay calm. Stay professional. Let the evidence speak for itself. I can do this. I know you can. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. We walked into the courthouse together, through security, up the elevator to the 4th floor. The hallway outside the courtroom was institutional and cold, fluorescent lights humming overhead. And there, sitting on a bench, were Emily and Derek with their lawyer, a shark named Gregory Thornton who specialized in estate litigation and had a reputation for winning at any cost. Emily looked perfect, as always. Her blonde hair was styled in soft waves, her makeup flawless, her designer dress appropriate and expensive. She looked like the successful, concerned older sister, the responsible family member trying to help her troubled younger sibling. When she saw me, her face crumpled into an expression of hurt and confusion. Issa, please. We can still talk about this. We don't have to do this in court. We're family. I walked past her without saying a word. Richard had been clear. No engagement. No reaction. Let them implode on their own. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood-paneled and formal, with the state seal hanging behind the judge's bench. There were only a handful of people present. Us. Them. Their lawyer. The court reporter. And a clerk. This was a civil hearing, not a trial. So there was no jury. Everything would come down to Judge Vance. She entered at 9 a.m. sharp. A tall woman in her late 50s with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that seemed to see right through you. We all stood as she took her seat. Be seated. I've reviewed the filings in this case, and I must say, they make for disturbing reading. Mr. Friend, Thornton, you represent the petitioners in the original guardianship case. Why don't you start by explaining to me why your clients believe Ms. Carter requires a guardian? Thornton stood, smooth and confident. Your Honor, my clients are deeply concerned about their sister's welfare. Over the past year, they've observed a pattern of concerning behavior. Confusion at medical appointments, Forgetting personal belongings. Difficulty managing routine tasks. They've consulted with medical professionals who've noted potential cognitive issues. My clients aren't seeking to exploit Ms. Cairns. Carter. They love her. They want to protect her. Judge Vance looked at him with an expression that could freeze lava. Do your clients also love Ms. Carter's $5 million inheritance? The courtroom went silent. Thornton stumbled. I'm sorry. Your Honor, it's a simple question. Counsel. Your clients are $700,000 in debt. Mr. Roberts is under investigation by the SEC for running a fraudulent investment scheme. They've borrowed extensively from Ms. Banes. Carter already with no repayment. So I'll ask again. Is there concern for Ms. Carter's welfare? Or for her bank account? Thornton's face flushed. Your Honor, my client's financial situation is irrelevant to Ms. Carter's mental state. On the contrary, I find it extremely relevant to their motivation. Mr. Hale, let's hear your response. Richard stood, and I'd never been more grateful to have him on my side. Your Honor, this isn't a case about guardianship. It's a case about greed. The petitioners have spent the last year manufacturing evidence of incompetence where none exists. They've mischaracterized normal behavior as signs of mental decline. They've pressured medical professionals into writing ambiguous notes, all while planning, in detail, how they would liquidate Ms. Carter's assets the moment they gained control. He submitted Dr. Reed's evaluation. This is an independent psychiatric evaluation conducted by Dr. Time. Ethan Reed, one of the foremost experts in forensic psychiatry in Illinois. His conclusion is unequivocal. Ms. Carter shows no signs of cognitive impairment or mental incompetence. She is, in fact, functioning at an above-average level for her age and education. Then Richard dropped the bomb. And, Your Honor, we have a recording, made by the petitioner's own daughter, 15-year-old Lily Roberts, who was so disturbed by what she heard that she felt compelled to come forward. In this recording, made just 3 weeks ago, the petitioners discuss in explicit detail their plan to exploit the guardianship process to steal Ms. Carter's assets. I watched Emily's face drain of color. Derek stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Thornton looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Judge Vance leaned forward. I'd like to hear this recording. Richard plugged a small speaker into his laptop and pressed play. Emily's voice filled the courtroom. So clear and cold it made my skin crawl all over again. When the court declares Isabella incompetent, we'll immediately sell her condo. That's at least $1.2 million right there. The recording played for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of my sister and her husband discussing my life like I was a piece of property to be divided up and sold. 3 minutes that destroyed any pretense that this had ever been about my well-being. When it ended, the silence was absolute. Judge Vance sat back in her chair, her expression one of barely controlled fury. Mrs. Roberts, would you like to explain to me why you and your husband were discussing the sale of your sister's property and the liquidation of her assets while simultaneously claiming you were concerned for her welfare? Emily tried. She really did. Your Honor, that conversation was taken out of context. We were just discussing hypotheticals. We would never actually... You were discussing specifics. Mrs. Roberts. Dollar amounts? Timelines. Strategies. That's not a hypothetical conversation. That's a plan. Derek tried to interject. Your Honor, if I may. You may not. Mr. Roberts, I'm not finished. Judge Vance turned to me. Ms. Carter, would you like to address the court? I stood on shaking legs. Richard had prepared me for this possibility, but my mind went blank. Then I thought about the last year. The manipulation. The gaslighting. The fear. The nights I'd laid awake wondering if I really was losing my mind. And I found my voice. Your Honor, I loved my sister. I trusted her. When our parents died, I thought we'd grow closer, that we'd support each other through the grief. Instead, she saw me as a resource. Every kind word, every sisterly gesture, was part of a strategy to gain access to my money. She tried to convince me I was incompetent so she could legally steal everything our parents left me. She weaponized my grief and turned it into evidence against me. I don't know if I'll ever trust anyone again after this, but I know I won't let her destroy me. I'm not incompetent. I'm not confused. I'm hurt. There's a difference. I sat down, surprised to find tears running down my face. Judge Vance nodded slowly. Ms. Back. Carter. You are clearly one of the most competent people in this courtroom today. The petition for guardianship is not only denied, it is denied with prejudice, meaning it cannot be refiled. Furthermore, I am issuing a restraining order. Mr. and Mrs. Roberts, you are prohibited from contacting Ms. Edio, Carter, or coming within 100 yards of her residence or place of business for a period of 2 years. Any violation will result in contempt charges. She wasn't finished. I am also referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal prosecution. The evidence presented today suggests fraud, elder exploitation, and conspiracy to commit theft. That's not a civil matter. That's criminal. And finally, all court costs and legal fees incurred by Ms. Carter in defending against this baseless petition will be paid by the petitioners. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. Court is adjourned. I sat there, unable to move. It was over. After 2 months of fear and paranoia and heartbreak, it was finally over. Richard put his hand on my shoulder. You did it. Issa. You won. But it didn't feel like winning. I turned and looked at Emily. She was crying. Quiet tears that made her mascara run. For a split second, I saw the sister I'd known as a child, the one who'd taught me to ride a bike and braided my hair before school. Then I remembered the recording, the callous planning, the willingness to destroy me, and I felt nothing but emptiness. In the hallway outside the Bredet courtroom, Lily was waiting. She'd been excused from school to testify if necessary, though it hadn't come to that. When she saw me, she ran over and threw her arms around me. Did you win? Please tell me you won. We won. Sweetheart, it's over. She burst into tears, sobbing into my shoulder. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry my mom did this to you. I'm so sorry. You have nothing to apologize for. You're the reason I'm free. You're the bravest person I know. Emily and Derek walked past us without a word, Thornton shepherding them quickly toward the elevators. Emily glanced back once, and the look on her face was one I couldn't quite read. Hatred? Shame? Regret? Maybe all three. The weeks that followed were strange and unmoored. The restraining order meant Emily couldn't contact me, but she tried anyway. Emails from fake accounts that Richard forwarded straight to the DA. Text messages from unknown numbers. Even a letter delivered by a process server asking me to reconsider, to remember that we were family. Each attempt was documented as a violation, adding to the case the DA was building against them. Lily came to stay with me. Her parents' house was in chaos. Derek was being indicted by the SEC. Their assets were being frozen. There were threats of foreclosure. Child Protective Services had gotten involved given the recording and the circumstances. Lily's caseworker agreed that staying with me was the best option. So at 37 years old, I suddenly became the guardian of a traumatized 15-year-old girl. It was hard at first. Lily was angry and grieving and confused. She loved her parents, despite everything, and she felt guilty for what she'd done even though it was the right thing. We went to therapy together. I learned about teenage anxiety and the lasting effects of growing up in a household where money was worshipped above everything else. Lily learned that love wasn't supposed to hurt. That family didn't mean unconditional tolerance of abuse. Slowly, we built something new. Lily taught me about her favorite bands and made me watch Korean dramas. I taught her to cook real meals, not just the takeout her parents had relied on. We had movie nights and planted herbs on my balcony and talked late into the night about everything and nothing. The condo that had felt like a crime scene slowly became a home again. 6 months after the hearing, Richard called with an update. The DA's office had offered Emily and Derek a plea deal. They'd plead guilty to attempted financial exploitation and fraud. Derek would also plead to the securities charges. In exchange, they'd avoid jail time but face hefty fines, probation, and restitution. They'd have to pay back the money I'd lent them over the years plus interest. Their house would be sold to pay their debts. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt sad. Emily had been my sister for 37 years. We'd shared a childhood, parents, a history, and she'd been willing to throw all of that away for money. How do you reconcile that? How do you mourn someone who's still alive but fundamentally changed beyond recognition? I decided to do something positive with the pain. Richard helped me set up a trust fund for Lily, a substantial amount set aside specifically for her education and her future. When she turned 18, she'd have access to enough money to go to any college she wanted, to travel, to start a business if she chose, but it would be managed carefully, with trustees and guidelines. So it would support her dreams without destroying her the way money had destroyed her parents. Lily cried when I told her, "Why would you do this for me? After everything my parents did? Because you're not your parents. Lily, you're brave and honest, and you chose what was right over what was easy. That deserves to be rewarded. And because I love you. You're my family now. The family I choose." We went to the lake house that spring. The one I'd inherited from my parents. It had been closed up since Dad died, and I hadn't been able to face it until now. We opened all the windows and let the sunlight stream in. We cleaned out 3 years of dust and emptiness. We restocked the kitchen and made the beds with fresh linens. And we sat on the dock as the sun set over the water, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Do you miss her?" Lily asked quietly. "My mom?" I thought about it. Sometimes, but I think I miss the idea of her more than who she actually was. I miss having a sister. I miss believing that family meant unconditional love. But I don't miss the manipulation or the fear or the feeling that I was never quite good enough for her. Do you think you'll ever forgive her? I don't know. Forgiveness isn't about pretending something didn't happen. It's about choosing not to let it control your life anymore. Maybe someday I'll get there. But right now, I'm okay with just moving forward. Lily leaned against my shoulder. "I love you, Aunt Izzy. I love you too, kiddo. So much." We sat there as the sun disappeared and the stars came out, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the hollow victory I'd expected, but genuine, hard-won peace. Emily had tried to take everything from me. My money, my autonomy, my sanity. But instead, she'd revealed what truly mattered. The people who show up when your world is falling apart. The courage to stand up for yourself. The strength to choose love over blood. The lake house, which had once represented everything I'd lost, became a symbol of everything I'd gained. A new life. A new family. A future I was building on my own terms. I still run my design business. I'm working on the biggest project of my career. A complete renovation of a historic hotel downtown. Lily helps sometimes, offering her teenage perspective on color schemes and furniture placement. She has an eye for it. Maybe she'll follow in my footsteps someday. Or maybe she'll choose something completely different. Either way, she'll have the freedom to choose. And the support to succeed. I think that's what family should be. Not obligation or control or conditional love based on what you can provide. Family should be the people who celebrate your success without jealousy, who support your struggles without exploitation, who love you for who you are, not what you have. Emily sent one final letter before the restraining order expired. It arrived on my 38th birthday. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a single page, her perfect handwriting filling the space. "Issa, I know you'll probably never read this. Or if you do, you won't care. But I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry. Not sorry that I got caught. Sorry that I ever thought money was worth more than having a sister. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even forgive myself. I just wanted you to know that somewhere, buried under all the greed and desperation and fear, the sister who loved you is still here. She's just buried so deep I'm not sure she'll ever find her way back to the surface. I hope you're happy. I hope Lily is okay. I hope you have the life you deserve. Emily." I read it twice, then put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd be ready to respond. Maybe not. Either way, it was her journey to take, not mine. That night, Lily and I had dinner with Richard and his wife. We laughed and told stories and celebrated the life we'd built from the rubble of betrayal. As I looked around the table at these people who'd chosen to be in my life, who'd fought for me and stood beside me and helped me become stronger than I ever knew I could be, I realized something important. I'd survived. More than that, I'd thrived. Emily had tried to break me, and instead she'd shown me exactly how strong I was. She'd tried to take everything, and instead I'd learned what really mattered. She'd tried to make me a victim, and instead I'd become a survivor. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who fights for you, who tells the truth even when it's hard. It's about choosing love over loyalty to people who hurt you. It's about breaking cycles and building something better. And that's exactly what I did. So let me ask you, have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting yourself? Have you ever discovered that someone you loved was willing to hurt you for their own gain? How did you find the strength to walk away from a toxic relationship, especially when it was with someone you were supposed to trust? Drop your story in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories of survival and strength. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or property, but the courage to protect what really matters: your dignity, your sanity, and your future.